I was in the back row when it happened. Second cup of burnt courthouse coffee cooling in my hands, thinking this hearing would be like the others, a slow grind of motions and eye rolls and polite lies. Then Judge Sterling Ashford looked down from that high-backed throne of his and said cold enough to fog glass, "Remove it." He didn't point. He didn't blink. He just cut the air in half with those two words and waited for the damage to land. Zara Monroe didn't ask him to repeat himself. She never does. Small frame navy suit wheels aligned to the witness box like she'd measured the angle twice chin steady. The five-pointed metal on her lapel caught the fluorescence and threw a little star onto the wood-bright, defiant tiny. A silver star is heavier than you think, even the replica pins. She reached up, fingers sure until they trembled. Rage does that cold, does that, and unclipped it. The sound it made on the rail was nothing, a little click, like a paper clip falling. But I felt it in my teeth like a bad note on a tuning fork. The gallery held its breath. A lawyer for Aegis Dynamics folded his arms and tried not to smile. Counsel, the Your Honor, prosecutor started, voice thin. "Your Honor, with respect, this is a court of law, not a costume party," Judge Ashford said, and the room's temperature dropped a full 10 degrees. Two deputies went statue still. Reporters scribbled like they were getting paid by the line. Somewhere behind me, a woman breathed a small prayer for someone who was still alive. Zara didn't flinch. She set the star down not far, just within reach, the smallest defiance, a quiet "Don't you forget me." If humiliation was the script, she refused the blocking. And in that silence, in that tight, ugly pause where a man with power tests how far he can push, I saw something I'd only ever seen under dust and gun smoke, resolve that doesn't lean on noise. You ever notice how rooms grow ears when they think someone's about to break? That's what the courtroom did. Tilted forward, ready to feast on a fall. Instead, Ashford said, "Proceed," and handed a smirking defense attorney the keys to the show. Here's the thing most folks miss. The injustice doesn't always hit like a slap. Sometimes it's the soft taps that bruise objections sustained on reflex credentials questioned with. A smile, a woman in a wheelchair asked how she could possibly judge gear used by our nation's finest. The poison is hidden in the courtesy. What qualifies you? The Aegis lawyer purred, a consultant to speak for combat units. Zara kept her voice level, smooth, dry like a blade on a wet stone. "Because I wore it," she said. 6 words. The laughter died halfway up a few throats and sat there burning. Ashford leaned in. His tone got sweeter, which is how you know you're about to be cut. "You speak as if you commanded troops," himself. Monroe, instead of advising them from an office. "Which is it?" If he'd raised his voice, it would have been almost honest. He didn't need to. He wanted her smaller box, something manageable in a file. The room was primed for cruelty. Some folks love a sanctioned humiliation. It absolves them for the price of a smirk when the back doors opened and swallowed the light. He came in slow uniform, pressed like a promise, shoulders square. Admiral Benton Wade doesn't rush. He lets the room adjust to him. He asked permission to address the court, voice even, and when the bailiff passed the sealed folder up, Ashford had to open it. Protocol is a funny thing. Men who worship it get strangled by it when the papers turn. The first page stripped the paint off the walls. Service record, Monroe Zara L. Naval Special Warfare. 11 years. 2 Bronze Stars with Valor. Purple Heart. Silver Star. Operation Lantern Gate Mission, lead extraction of 19 hostages under sustained fire. Names listed. One of them, Second Lieutenant Owen Ashford. You could feel the floor tilt. The judge's face went from ruddy to chalk, and for the first time all morning his eyes moved like he'd touched a live wire. That was his nephew on the page, his blood saved by the woman he'd just ordered to unpin her honor, like it was a sticker. He cleared his throat and forgot how to make sound. The Aegis lawyer's grin fell off his face. The gallery didn't cheer. It didn't have to. Silence did the work. Admiral Wade had more. He always does. A slimmer folder, same red seal. Emails. I've read a lot of them in my life, the way they bare a soul without meaning to. These were winter cold. Coordination with executives at Aegis, the vendor whose vests had failed in the field, sold on a promise they hadn't earned. Strategy to contain unhelpful testimony. Talking points to bury bad results under proprietary data. A federal judge trading justice for favors for dinners, for promises that always come due. Paper that smelled like smoke because it had been near fire. The young prosecutor stood like someone had yanked a wire. Your Honor, the bench is compromised. The government moves for an immediate mistrial. You could hear the country breathe in that sentence. For a second, I saw Ashford try to recover what he'd lost, hand on the gavel, like a lifeboat voice cracking where it used to cut. Then the side door opened and the chief judge walked in, robe heavy with the kind of authority that doesn't need volume. Sterling Ashford, she said, was relieved of these proceedings pending investigation. No drama, no shouting. The bailiff touched his elbow. He left smaller than he'd arrived, like the robe had been carrying him and not the other way around. Zara didn't gloat. Her hand hovered an inch above the silver star and fell. The record had spoken louder than any mouth could. What came next wasn't a neat montage, it never is. The Department of Justice set up shop 2 floors up, subpoenas moving like weather agents, whose calm makes you confess without meaning to. A lab tech stopped answering calls. A former armorer got a note under his hotel door. Remember who pays you now. A sedan idled across from Zara's building 3 nights in a row, a new driver each time with the same lazy patience. Paper cuts the kind that don't bleed much, but sting long. Marcus, no, not Marcus, make it Owen, because we're not repeating history. Owen Ashford showed up to talk to her uniform pressed like he owed it something. I watched from a hallway that had seen too many deals and not enough apologies. You pulled me out of that hallway in Lakari, he said, voice ragged as a raw edge. I signed in the requisitions for the Aegis vests. I told myself I was just the paperwork, not the consequence. His eyes went glassy and he let the guilt do what it does. When you stop giving it oxygen, it flares then steadies. I stayed quiet when my uncle told me to. I won't anymore. Zara said the thing that cut and cured at once. A process doesn't stop bullets. She told him, not unkind, not soft. Truth does. Pick a side. He picked. That's how redemption starts, not with trumpets, but with a signature on a sworn statement and a choice to be scorched rather than shadowed. Weeks piled up. Hearing rooms replaced courtrooms. You could feel the city turn its head. Oversight, that's what they call it when Congress decides to remember it has eyes. Zara rolled to the witness table through a side door, no fanfare. She didn't ask for a statement. They offered one, and she made it short enough to hurt. We put price ahead of performance, she said. We put budgets ahead of bodies. She didn't point to villains, she pointed to incentives. Then she gave them the map you draw when you're tired of burying friends. Field trials with operational units before deployment, real sweat, real sand, not showroom demos. A national failure reporting system with protections for the people who tell the truth. Independent labs with random audits. Red team everything and try to break it yourself before someone else does. Criminal liability, call it what it is when executives sign off on gear they know won't hold. People shifted. Brass leaned forward like gravity had changed. An industry rep scribbled and passed a note that looked like the start of a retreat. A member of the committee asked where the money would come from, the question that eats all others. Zara didn't blink. We already paid, she said. We paid in a currency you can't print. They called it the Monroe Standard. Somebody always wants a name to hang a promise on and started moving paper like it mattered. It did. Field trials scheduled. Budgets cut and redirected. Language in a bill that would either save lives or collect dust, depending on how many people kept standing when the cameras left. There's a cemetery across the river that can quiet a storm in your chest. Zara went alone on a cool morning when the wind worked its way through the short trees and the stones lined up like a metronome. She stopped at a marker with a name I won't print because he belongs to people who loved him before he belonged to history. She pressed a small replica star into the grass and said what survivors say when they're done pretending it ever gets easier. We're still moving, she whispered, step by step. The breeze made a sound like paper turning. She stayed until the quiet held. Ashford resigned before the indictment landed. He didn't rage on TV or claim the deep state was plotting under his bed. He shrank. The robe went into a garment bag. The portrait came off the wall. His nephew raised his right hand and promised to tell the truth in a hearing room that smelled like coffee and old carpet. That's what justice looks like up close, unfancy, relentless, slow until it isn't. At a reception, you'd call a celebration if the people in the room didn't hate the word. The Secretary of Defense lifted a glass and said the kind of sentence they carve into plaques. Lives before ledgers. It plays well. What matters is whether it plays when the room empties. Owen found Zara near the exit the way men find the person who cut them free. "It's done," he said. "My statement, the file's all of it." He looked older in a better way, the kind of age that comes from setting things down instead of stacking them on your back. She nodded once. They didn't hug. Some thank yous don't need touch. Back home, the bay threw amber light onto her ceiling, and the flag outside her window snapped in the kind of wind that makes you think of ships and long roads. She let herself smile small private like a secret you can finally keep. "Mission in progress," she said to a room that had learned how to listen. "We're not done." People ask me, did the judge lose his career because he picked on a medal? Or because he got caught doing what too many powerful men do when they think nobody is looking, counting favors in place of truth? I tell them the same thing every time. He lost it because he forgot what rooms are for. He thought a courtroom was a throne. He forgot it's a mirror. But here's the part that still stirs me awake at night, the peace that won't sit still. When he ordered her to strip the star, some folks smiled. You saw it, I saw it. We all learned something about the room we live in. The Monroe Standard won't fix that on its own. Paper changes, rules, people change rooms. Maybe that's the argument we're meant to keep having out loud on purpose. So tell me, was the judge's first sin the corruption or the contempt? And which one scares you more, the broken gear or the people who laugh when someone is ordered to unpin their honor? The nephew who stayed quiet or the system that made silence feel safer than truth? Drop your city. In the comments, tell me what justice looks like where you live. Tell me what you've seen in rooms like this, and if you believe lives should always come before ledgers, share this story. Subscribe for more, and let's keep the light on the places. Power prefers to keep dark.